This is the Samsung Galaxy S7, arguably one of Samsung's most important smartphones, alongside the original S, S3 and S23 Ultra. As it is about to hit its 10th birthday soon, let's take a look at all of the things that made this one of the most special Samsung phones, and the things that let it down back in the day. The S7 came in a few variations. There's the standard S7 as seen here, the S7 Edge which spotted a larger display with curved edges, and the rugged S7 Active, which was an AT&T exclusive in America and did not make it to Europe to my knowledge. The first thing that you need to know about the Galaxy S7 is that its precursor, the Galaxy S6, was missing a lot of features that were included with the S5, and fans were not happy. With the S6, the microSD card slot had been removed, there was no water resistance, the battery capacity had been lowered, the USB 3.0 port had been removed, HDMI over USB disappeared, and there was no in-camera OIS. In a rare precedent for a large corporation, and especially for Samsung, they actually listened to fans' feedback with the Galaxy S7. USB 3.0 was still nowhere to be seen, and likewise with the HDMI out, but Samsung had brought back the expandable storage, waterproofing, OIS and increased battery size while keeping Qualcomm's Quick Charge 2.0, although we did lose the infrared from the S6, boo. My first thought when I picked up this phone for the first time in 7 years was wow, it really is small, thin and light. Its design is genuinely perfect. With the curved rear glass, the phone is stupidly comfortable to hold. All of the buttons are easily accessible by a thumb and index finger. You are able to easily touch the top of the screen. It's also just a gorgeous phone. I had a black model back in the day, so I was happy to find another black model in a decent condition, with a minor burn-in and a few hairline scratches. On the front of the phone, we have a blast from the past, the notification LED, which, while yes, we do have always on display on modern phones that still serve the same function, an LED is still a nice feature. And by the way, we also get the always on display on the S7. Though it wasn't exactly an uncommon feature back in 2016, not in Android land at least. While on the topic of the display, despite the fact that the display is flat, the glass is slightly raised and curved, kind of like an Apple Watch, and it's no wonder why there are so many cracked examples on eBay, since there is nothing to protect the screen in case of a fall other than the home button, which also doubles as a fingerprint scanner. And beside it are the multitasking and back buttons. I've been using gestures on every phone after the S7, so it's been difficult to get used to having to move my finger down every time I want to go back. On the bottom of the phone we have the headphone jack, as well as the USB 2.0 micro USB port and a speaker grill. On the back we of course have a single camera, since at that point, only LG were including dual cameras, and when Samsung released the first Galaxy phone with two cameras, the Galaxy Note 8, Samsung opted for a telephoto lens instead of an ultrawide. But to the right of the camera is something interesting, a heart rate and oxygen saturation sensor. Yeah, before we all carried around smartwatches and fitness trackers, Samsung made sure that you could track your heart rate directly on the phone. Although there did exist apps that would let you track your heart rate with any phone by using the camera and the flash. What is truly surprising is the fact that the Samsung Health app still supports the rear sensor, despite the fact that the last Samsung phone to feature it was the Galaxy S10, which stopped receiving updates 3 years ago. I remember the heart rate sensor was incredibly tedious to get working and would take multiple attempts to register my heart rate, so I eventually gave up using it. Let me just round off talking about the hardware before I get onto the software. I wasn't a fan of the audio quality from the headphone jack when I owned the phone, and I wasn't sure if it was my cheaper Audio-Technica headphones or if it was the phone. Well, now I know, the answer was probably both. The Cirrus Logic DAC does add a bit of punch, which is always appreciated on my headphones, but it adds so much sparkle in the highs that unless I listen to the audio at a lower volume than I normally would with any other device, I get fatigued by the sound in mere seconds. I've just released a whole video about shooting on the Galaxy S7, so as a TLDR, the stock Samsung camera app applies too much post-processing, causing the photos to come out too over-sharpened and dull-looking. But the modded Google camera app was a popular choice for many folks due to its far better processing. The Samsung camera app featured motion photos, starting a long trend of Samsung not enabling by default and people thinking that live photos are an iPhone-only feature. The night photos from this camera were amazing at the time due to the ISO cell sensor, which even in near pitch darkness, you were still able to capture a bright photo, although there was still a lot of motion blur. The front-facing camera is only 5 megapixels, but it is extremely wide, and you can use your index finger to take a photograph by placing it on the heart rate scanner. Oh, and you can launch the camera app by double pressing the home button. I could talk more about the hardware, but the 9-year-old Galaxy does share much of the same specs on paper as modern phones, so let's move on to software. The software is one of the reasons why I think the Galaxy S7 is an important device in Samsung's history, and that is all thanks to Samsung Experience UX, the short-lived skin that sat in between the historically disliked TouchWiz and the modern One UI skin. Samsung's designers really did sit down and had a thought on how they can remove all of the skin's unnecessary gimmicks, and how they can make the skin look clean and professional instead of their previous childish attempts. The minimalist line-based icons, the condensed fonts, the use of all caps for title headings, the clean animations and the stock-like notification panel. It all felt like such a simple skin that was not at all in your face. Then One UI happened, which I wasn't a fan of initially. It all felt very unfinished. but with each update it did get better and better, until the controversial notification drawer redesign of One UI 6, and the utter disaster of One UI 7's design. But okay, let's say you didn't like how the Galaxy S7 looked. Well, not to worry, since the Galaxy Theme Store would let you download themes that would overhaul your entire device, from the wallpaper and always on display to the icons and notification panel. Most themes on the store were a bit hideous, I must admit, but there used to be a community made app called Theme Galaxy that would let you create your own theme, and I rocked my own holo theme, although at least with modern Samsung phones you do have the good luck suite of apps which are great. And on a final note, I am truly shocked by how everything still works on this phone. The Galaxy Store, Galaxy Theme Store, Samsung Health, Samsung Cloud, the weather app, the local places inside the phone app that I'll definitely not be pressing, etc. Most of these apps do not receive updates anymore, but everything that connects to the internet still does, which is not always the case on a near decade-old device. That's 8 years behind updates, that's for sure. What also surprised me is that SoundCamp, a long discontinued GarageBand-like app created by Samsung, was able to pull assets from some dusty server. The app was pretty fun to play around with back then, although it doesn't pale in comparison to GarageBand. Because I remember this phone having a vibrant modding community, I decided to take a look and see what custom ROMs I can install, and I found a ROM that upgrades the Galaxy S7 to use One UI 4 on top of Android 12. The installation was straight out of a Michael MJD video. I launch Odin, it doesn't see the phone. Alright, cool. I think I uninstalled Samsung drivers at some point. I install them, plug the phone back in, Windows gives me a USB device malfunction message. I check Device Manager, which says something about no device identifier. I restart the phone, restart Odin, it works, cool. I hit flash, and instantly get a message about the FRP lock. I knew it had to do with Google's anti-theft protection, but I could swear that when I owned the S7, you could just flash it willy-nilly and that would circumvent the FRP lock. So I'm unsure. Anyway, I removed my Samsung and Google account, TWRP flashed successfully, but then it couldn't see any of the internal storage. The instructions did call for me to flash a repartitioner, which I did, but it still did nothing. I changed the partitions from ext4 to ext4, still nothing. After a bit of searching, I found a solution. I found that the solution was to change the data partition to ext2 and then back to ext4, and that worked. And everything was smooth sailing from there, except I couldn't ADB sideload the ROM, so I had to use the microSD card. To not start another ramble, this skin rocks. And you know what rocks even more? The fact that good luck works. It works on a hacked 9-year-old phone, but not on a brand new Galaxy A16, you couldn't make this stuff up. The only thing that is glitchy is the camera app, which requires you to shoot photos in 16:9, ew. And there is no 4K video recording, and it seems like the photos have took a massive dip in quality. Gcam sadly, but unsurprisingly, does not work. The headphone jack is also only outputting in 16-bit 48kHz. The final thing that I want to point out is the performance. I am absolutely laughing. This phone has absolutely no right to run as smoothly as it does, especially on a relatively bloated skin that was never supported officially. Just as a final note before I finish this video, Gcam actually works on Lineage OS. As you can see, you can actually see the detail in a Sony badge. It's a backlit scene, and this is from the stock Lineage OS camera app. Cool. Power amp also still reports 16-bit 48kHz. Sounds alright though, so there's that. And it's also very smooth, but I have literally nothing on it. But this is probably the way to go if you are thinking of using this phone in 2025. Ultimately, I want to stop this video here as it's getting quite long. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.